All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with a returned to the US, Drew Dinsick. Europe gave him back to us to talk about the Sunday 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. games. And then we're going to talk some of the openers for week 4 in the NFL and then a little Monday Night Football to close. We are taping this as Max Crosby is sacking Kenny Pickett at the end of the first quarter of Sunday Night Football. So we won't cover that game, but Drew, what was your biggest takeaway from Sunday in your jet lag state?
Well, it's a good way to stave off a little jet lag is watch the Miami Dolphins offense, Jay. Boy, oh boy, did they put on a show. 70 points scored. A lot of that was attributable, I think, to the Broncos are not great. And they were in an absolutely disastrous situational spot where, first 2 games of the season, they played super hard at home at altitude. And then they go on the road early in the season and you got to play in the heat and humidity of Miami. And you got a lackluster effort out of that. I think the defense no showing was somewhat predictable. I was surprised the market bet that game down into the, throughout the week. That closed lower than that was one of the handful of plays the market went against me on, and it did not matter. That closed 47.5. Was there like some expectation there was going to be weather or something? Like I didn't get it. I never understood why people were betting that under. That was a dead nut over in every way, shape, and form, and it got there by like the middle of the third quarter. So fun outcome from the Miami Dolphins. Buffalo Bills looked amazing on the road, and I think that sets up the game of the month next week, which is probably where we start looking ahead here. But other than that, it was it was a pretty chalky 1 o'clock slate, and it was a pretty solid set of outcomes for me. I had fortuitous end of game, third week in a row, 1-score game. Minnesota can't close the door, and they lose by 4 to the Chargers. So Chargers was a nice win in my book. In New England was a nice win in my book. Granted, they were, I thought, in control of that game from pretty much whistle to whistle. But the fun, weird ones were Houston with the wild upset. Jacksonville Jaguars obviously have massive holes still. Not the team I was expecting them to be early in the season. And the comeback for the Green Bay Packers was insane. 17-0 into the fourth quarter and winning 18-17, making some, LaFleur making some good coaching decisions, like going for 2, when he was down 14 and they scored the touchdown. That ultimately was the game-winning point. I know that the Saints had an opportunity to kick a field goal late and win that one. But good job by LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers. That kind of win is going to be massive for keeping pace with the Lions in the NFC North and keeping pace with the, having a tiebreaker against the Saints in the wild card if it comes to that.
Yep. No, absolutely. We'll get to Miami Buffalo in a second because that's obviously the big one next week. But looking at this early slate, to me, the things that jumped out. One, I don't think the Chargers or Vikings are particularly good. I think Cleveland has the best defense in the NFL, potentially by margin, after they dismantled the Titans. There was a crazy tweet, and I can't remember who tweeted it out, and I apologize, but it's basically looking at the top 3 performances in terms of success rate against Cleveland in week 1, Cleveland in week 3, Cleveland in week 2 out of the entire league. So they've had the 3 best defensive performances by one way to measure defense of anyone in the league. And Myles Garrett was obviously a terror as he closed the gap in Defensive Player of the Year, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. With New England against the Jets, that last play, the Hail Mary that Randall Cobb narrowly missed, reminded me of Gronkowski on the Hail Mary in the second Giants-Patriots Super Bowl, where I think if he had a little bit more juice in his ankle, that he might have gotten there and caught it for the greatest moment in football history. And it would be a different story, I guess, about Zach Wilson if Randall Cobb is a split second better with his timing and gets that one. But that Jets offense is just the exact same that it was in the back half of last year, which is unwatchable. Green Bay, New Orleans, very strange game. Denver, Miami. Yeah, I don't understand really what has happened to the Denver defense. I know Justin Simmons was out, but that was obviously a disaster. And then the other thing that stood out to me from the early slate is that Desmond Ridder might rival Zach Wilson for being the worst quarterback in the league. And he rendered that team just completely not viable today. Bijan Robinson couldn't do anything. Ridder was just airmailing passes, didn't look like an NFL quarterback. And I wonder if he is so bad, Drew, that just changes the complexion of that division, given that the Falcons were basically the joint favorite to win it. Looks like Derek Carr might be out a little bit of time for the Saints. But, I mean, how do you handicap that division at the moment?
I mean, Bucs to lose, I guess. I mean, we're going to get to the Bucs Eagles, which I'm against the Bucs, but it certainly doesn't feel like anyone is stepping up there. Yeah, NFC South is an absolute hot mess. The Falcons could win it with a 9-win season, and we could week in, week out say Ridder is the 32nd best starting quarterback. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I agree. I was interested in your comment about Cleveland being best defense by margin. I got to think about that one a little bit. I liked all your other points. One thing I forgot to bring up in the morning slate, but extreme market support for my Colts, man. That closed 7. That was a decent move. And the Colts fought really, really hard in that game. Like the Ravens just they're not rated correctly for the players available on that team at this moment, in my opinion. And I thought it showed today. And the Colts are definitely, they're well coached. They're more talented than people realize. Certainly more talented than I realized starting the season. So Colts were a really fun bet today. And I guess just across the board, I want to say we made a point about the total being bet in the wrong direction in Miami. The sides that really took some serious action this week outside of Washington were all really, really, really smart, really sharp, really correct, right? Like I thought Chargers coming down to a pick. Yep, correct. Chargers were the right side, in my opinion. Cleveland coming off of 3 and to 3.5. Absolutely correct. Houston being bet into a 7 to close was absolutely correct. And then the Colts, as we mentioned, right side there all the way. So well done to the sharper players who are shaping these markets late in the week.
Yeah. The only thing there is that I didn't understand it, but the Broncos being bet from 6.5 down to 5.5, I didn't get at all. And then I know there was injury news about it with Christian Watson and Aaron Jones and Jair Alexander all being ruled out, but I didn't really understand the Packers being 1.5-point favorites. And then it flipped into the Saints being 1-point favorites. And to be honest, I think the Saints are probably the right side there.
Yeah,
given
I think so.
Carr got hurt, Jameis didn't look great in limited time. But that was just a strange game across the board. The last thing I'll say is that, to me, in terms of just a unit that stood out in a really negative way, is Jacksonville. The fact that CJ Stroud dropped back 30 times and is missing 80% of his offensive line, and the one guy, the 20%, is Shaq Mason, who might be kind of trending towards done. The fact that the Jags couldn't sack him once on 30 dropbacks after he was sacked 11 times in the first 2 weeks, and that was kind of the fear with this Jacksonville team, is their lack of a pass rush outside of Josh Allen.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty big red flag in a division that all of a sudden is kind of wide open.
Yeah, they need a game changer on the defensive side of the ball so badly. And yeah, they're an incomplete team. And they don't have a ton of flexibility. Their cap is spread pretty thin right now. They're gonna, they don't seem to have allocated their rookie free agency, their rookie quarterback cap flexibility. They've seemed to have squandered it. This should be a more talented team. They should have more game breakers. They should have been in play for some key trades to really get the guy that would have put this defense over the top. They just don't have them right now. I don't know that I'm willing to say that the AFC South is open for business. I still think that there was a whiff of, Jags looking past their opponents here. Jags obviously planning on a London trip here, a 2-week London trip coming up. That could have been a bit of a distraction in terms of giving an honest effort, but it's pretty clear they're an incomplete team.
Yep, agreed. We'll touch on the Cowboys as well, but we'll do it as part of looking at the openers. So before we get to them, it's an AFC clash this Sunday night. Drew, catch Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs traveling east to square off with Garrett Wilson and the Jets. Going to need Garrett Wilson to be more part of that game than his brother Zach, if you're a Jets fan. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern only on NBC and Peacock. All right, week 4 openers outside of Steelers, Texans, and Raiders, Chargers, which we won't talk in too much detail given that those two teams are playing as we speak. I'll just race through these and you let me know what stands out to you. Lions, 1-point favorite at the Packers. Jags, 3-point favorites in London against the Falcons. Bills, 2.5 home to the Dolphins. Vikings, -3 at the Panthers. Broncos, -3 at Chicago. The Browns are 2-point favorites home to the Ravens. That was pick initially and has already just been bet up to the Browns, which I think is correct. The Colts are 1-point favorites at home to the Rams. Saints -2.5 home to the Bucs. Eagles -7 home to the Commanders. And Titans Bengals is pick, which is kind of just a fake line, placeholder. Yeah. It's not going to close pick, I would have thought. Anything leap out to you there in terms of the sides?
Yeah, I would expect that the Jags probably are a bet on as a kind of a bounce back spot, considering how how things went for them. And in the other side of the coin, I would expect people probably try to take advantage of Houston with a little bit of an exhale after getting their first win, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, we have yet to kind of know what state the Steelers are going to be in heading into that game, but I would guess that that kind of trends towards a 6 if the Steelers finish this one off with a win. The major game of the week that I really want to spend the most time on is Miami Buffalo. I was hoping against hope we were going to get a shot at Buffalo under 3. We talked about it last week. What do you think has to happen to get this number under 3 for the Bills? And here we are. 2.5 feels like a bet on the Bills through and through and through. I am not saying that the Dolphins are not good. Dolphins are amazing. Their offense is so well coordinated. And I think the fact that you've seen them just absolutely stomp the 2 bad defenses that they've played, and then get somewhat kept under a lid on the good defense they played, gives me some expectation here that the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to keep the Dolphins into the 20s. And when you flip the coin and you look at the Bills' offensive matchups against this Miami Dolphins defense, I think they're scoring into the 30s here. So game of the week, clearly Miami Buffalo. I'm going to be a Buffalo Bills flag waver all week this week. I don't know if it's going to be my best bet. It's a high leverage game in terms of the overall playoff picture and the AFC in particular. But that's the one that has the most attention to for me. And it's the one that I'm the most excited to sit down and watch. Thursday Night Football is also worth mentioning real quick. I would expect Detroit probably gets bet there. They matched up so well against Green Bay last year. And, it's just Green Bay feels like the betting market really wants to take on that team and to do so with the Lions right now, considering how good they look. That seems like another obvious market sentiment, potential move. And again, that one really matters in the fabric of the NFC North.
Yeah. I mean, Miami Buffalo is interesting. To me, I wouldn't make a bet either way. I just think that this Miami offense just might have kind of solved defense. They look like the best offense in the league at the moment. I also think that defensively, the weakness of the Bills' offense is their offensive line, and now you have Wilkins, Phillips, Chubb going up against that offensive line. Miami played Buffalo really well 3 times last year. They beat them.
That's a great point.
Then they almost beat them in Buffalo in one of the best games of the year on the snow. They really could have had that game. And then with Skylar Thompson, they almost beat them in the playoffs as well, as almost 2 touchdown dogs from memory. They very nearly won that game. They were like 1 play away from marching down the end at the end and stealing the victory. So I don't know. And also, I think Josh Allen's a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa, but I don't know. Tua has been insane the first 3 weeks. He's a better quarterback than he was last year. Look, it's a lot of that. Obviously, it's the system and having Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle will probably be back, I would guess. Not 100% sure on that. Teron Armstead back as well. I don't know. The Dolphins could just be the best team in football, and we just don't know it yet. But beating another team 70-20 is a pretty good sign. And I think we'll learn. Look, I think the Dolphins' offense is clearly very, very good. I think we'll learn a lot more about their defense, which did get lit up against the Chargers in week 1. A Chargers offense which hasn't looked as dominant. But what do you think of the thought that this is just the best offense in the league by margin potentially, and they're just going to run over everyone?
I think their EPA per play type and some of their kind of truly superlative numbers are going to regress.
You don't think Tua is going to be 0.91 EPA per play like he was today?
I don't. And it sounds like I don't want to paint myself into a corner where I'm like doubting him or hating on Tua, because like very, very cool that he is taking this next step. Very, very cool that the most, that the most dynamic offensive player in the league in Tyreek Hill has a quarterback who can utilize his skill set the way that those guys are playing together. It's awesome. Like, I'm very excited to see it continue to happen. I just feel like there was a pretty clear step up in class from Chargers to Patriots in terms of defenses faced, and you saw it, you felt it. Like, it wasn't quite as smooth, as clean, and as easy for the Dolphins to get into the 20s against the Patriots as it was the previous week, where they were literally hot knife through butter. And then today was just like a no contest. So I think this is going to be a step up in class. I think the Bills defense, after a performance that made me question everything I had about them as a rating on Monday Night Football week 1, they have been much more competent in weeks 2 and weeks 3. And I think that defense, if they show up, can give it can at least kind of keep a lid on that unit. A ton of it is just they have experienced safeties. They have a deep, if not super talented, a deep roster of cornerbacks. They can go light box, nickel and dime defensive looks, and really take away some of the super explosive, really just disruptive stuff that the Dolphins have been doing lately. And for those reasons, I think they're going to have them, they're going to be in that game. And again, like you made a good point, like Miami played the Bills tough 3 times, especially if you just kind of zero in right on. Well, I think they covered all 3. Well, they won the first one, they covered the second 2. But that first win, man, that was a misleading scoreline if you ever saw one. They outgained the Bills. I mean, the Dolphins like 500-200 in that game in terms of total offense, and they just had some just bizarre, fluky turnover and penalty and missed 4th down conversions. It was a really, really strange outcome for the what the expected score was if you just kind of dial in on some of the specific stats they accrued. So I think that the takeaway I have from those 3 games is the Bills are going to score on these guys. And the entire handicap comes down to, can the Bills defense keep the Dolphins under 30? And if they do, then I think the Bills cover. If they don't, then I think we got ourselves a sweat. But I like the Bills 2.5. I don't know that it'll go to 3, but that's going to be a fun bet to have in pocket.
Yep, we'll see. I mean, it'll be a good referendum on, exactly how good this Miami offense is. I think I lean towards them just being a juggernaut. And even though I think the Patriots defense is clearly excellent, and yes, Miami didn't have amazing success against them, at the same time, Tua was still 0.33 EPA per play in that
Sure.
game, which for context, Patrick Mahomes last year, when he won MVP, was 0.30. So Tua was playing at a better than Patrick Mahomes MVP level against a really good defense without Teron Armstead, with Jalen Waddle coming out of the game, and also with Tyreek Hill kind of blanketed and not really doing anything from by Christian Gonzalez. So I don't know. We'll see. I get some questions about Jordan Poyer as well. I'm not sure he is what he was, but yeah, it'll be good. And if the Dolphins win, if they go into Buffalo and win outright, I think Mike McDaniel becomes about as short as a Coach of the Year candidate as there's ever been after 4 weeks. If he's 4-0 with half the tiebreak against Buffalo, having gotten the hard part of the tiebreak with a road win, then all of a sudden, yeah, that award certainly goes through him, and Tua will be a hefty MVP favorite at that point as well.
Yeah.
Which I think if he does win, then it'll be justified. It's crazy. Tua was 0.91 EPA per play today. His team scored 70 points and a 50-point win. There was 3 passes that fell incomplete. He threw for what, 3-4 touchdowns, and he didn't gain that much ground on Patrick Mahomes for MVP, because Mahomes was also completely insane. But I think MVP will go through those two guys.
Let me ask you an opinion question about the Dolphins while we're here.
Sure.
If I let you go back in time and have one ticket at preseason price on Tua MVP, McDaniel Coach of the Year, or Tyreek Hill Offensive Player of the Year, which of those 3 tickets do you want in your hand right now?
McDaniel. Yeah, McDaniel. I think McDaniel is the one guy who is a bit more resilient against not needing the 1 seed necessarily. And also I think that Patrick Mahomes and Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey in the respective other 2 awards are more scary than Dan Campbell or Matt LaFleur. I just think McDaniel, I think they can get the 2 seed and win the AFC East, and the Chiefs get the 1 seed, and McDaniel can still win Coach of the Year in that scenario. I'm not sure Tua can beat Mahomes in that scenario. But yeah, I think McDaniel is a heavy favorite in that award at the moment. And
you think
Tyreek, I mean, obviously he's a top 3 favorite for Offensive Player of the Year. I would probably have him second behind McCaffrey, slightly in front of Jefferson. The issue with Tyreek Hill is that offense is so egalitarian that he's just going to have some games where he's 5 for 40, I think, like he was against the Patriots, in ways that I don't think McCaffrey's going to really have those games. Even though he's also in a star-studded offense, just seems like they're committed to giving him such a lion's share of it. And then Jefferson, who might break the receiving yards record, is on an 0-3 team, and it's going to be hard for a guy who finished 13-4 last year to win if he's on a 7-10 team and won 6 games fewer, and his 2 biggest competitors are on 2 of the 4 best teams in football, and he's on the 19th best team or whatever. So I don't know. He's definitely got a path to winning. It's just, I think, a little bit narrower than McCaffrey and Hill. But yeah, I would be taking those 3 guys over the field, clearly. And the market doesn't have it like that at the moment. You can back all 3 of those and get a bigger than even price. Yeah, you can. So that's probably the best play, though I think McCaffrey and Hill are out in front. Quickly, the later games. So right now, the Chargers are 4-point favorites home to the Raiders. We'll see how that unfolds with Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys are 6.5-point favorites over the Patriots. Niners, 14-point favorites home to Josh Dobbs and the mighty Cardinals. The Chiefs are 9-point favorites home to the Jets on Sunday Night Football. Total there is 42.5, which the Chiefs are going to need to do a large chunk of the work there. And then the Seahawks are 2-point favorites at the New York Giants. I think Cowboys-Patriots is the most interesting one here, given that the Cowboys just lost by double digits to the Arizona Cardinals as 12.5-point favorites themselves. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that Cowboys performance. I guess Trayvon Diggs is the greatest player in the history of football. Deron Bland certainly did not cover himself in glory, filling in for Diggs on the outside. His first play of substance was getting called for a lengthy DPI. So maybe that just changes the complexion of their defense. They certainly didn't look as connected. And it just kind of looked like the defense didn't really show up that much. And then it was just a bad Dak game. And Dak has these games every year, 2 or 3 of them, where he just looks terrible. He had the awful pick. He just wasn't great overall. I don't really understand McCarthy's game plan of just being down 8 in the 4th quarter and just running Pollard for 4 or 5 yards a pop. It's like, time's not your friend, Mike. If you don't score a touchdown and get the 2-point here, you're going to have to score again. So I don't know. I don't think this is a particularly well-coached team on offense, and I think they just had a bad day on defense. So they're not writing the Cowboys off, but they certainly look like a weaker team than the Niners based on that output. How does your opinion of Dallas change after today?
I'm willing to just write that off. They were looking past their opponent. They figured they were going to get a win, and it's tough to get up week in, week out. We're only at, it's week 3 of the season, so it's early enough that there's no real premium on these games. And when you face a team that you think is tanking and they come out and play with heart, then you can have these types of surprises. So yeah, I give the Cowboys a pass. Lots of good teams have stinkers early in the season and then ultimately reach their destiny. So hopefully a wake-up call for them. And I think a good matchup for the Dallas Cowboys defense against this Patriots offense. Patriots offense, again, is like, it's pulling teeth. It's really, really rough watching them, struggle at times. But they're doing just enough to kind of stay competitive. And 7 points is a big number. If this comes off a 7, I'm playing Dallas. If it stays where it is, I'm going to give some serious consideration to this under, because the unit, your breakdown, I think, was exactly correct. Dallas offense ain't right, and their defense, I think, is still good enough to keep the Patriots into the low teens. So I think this is probably a lean under 42, lean Cowboys, but we're waiting for a 6.5.
Yep, no, that is fair enough. And the Cowboys in 2 weeks play at the Niners, which might be the most consequential game in the NFC regular season, though. The Eagles obviously in the box seat to win the NFC East after the Cowboys losing today. And that game will be on NBC. 49ers Cowboys, bit of a better matchup than Zach Wilson against the Kansas City Chiefs defense, which just almost shut out the Bears.
Shutout is looming. I mean, I don't know why. I have staked to the gills Jets lowest scoring team when I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to play. I don't know why. Like, my biggest bet every week isn't just Jets team total under. I just got to keep going to the well until they start setting those below 14, because Jets offense is not good.
Yeah, Zach Wilson on the 4th and 10 throwing that pass to the tight end at the line of scrimmage kind of summed up the game. He's immediately tackled. And it feels like Zach Wilson is not long for New York. I think their bye week is in 3 weeks or so. I just can't imagine that he gets out the other side of that, given that he's got to play Kansas City in prime time. Also got a game against the Eagles looming. Speaking of those Eagles, we'll get to Monday Night Football in a second, but a reminder that Bet the Edge isn't the only show every weekday during the NFL season. You can also check out the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, Connor Rogers, and myself. It airs live on Peacock at noon, re-airs at 4 p.m. Eastern, and is available on our NFL on NBC Sports YouTube channel, as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts. Okay, Monday Night Football. 2 games, again, as is custom. The Eagles are 4.5-point favorites at the Bucs. The total is 45. Do you believe in Baker Mayfield, Drew, or is this where the dream runs out?
No, 4.5 in the accounts for me on Eagles here. I don't get the move off of 6. I saw it move off of 6. I was like, ooh, I'm going to get a nice cheap Eagles here. And by the time I kind of got around to it, it's 4.5. I don't get it. My fair is 6. I think the Eagles have long tail to winning by margin here. I know that, the secondary is not especially healthy, and outside of Slay, you're really like looking for warm bodies who can cover Godwin and Evans, and that all makes sense. But Baker Mayfield is going to be under extreme duress in this game. That's the entire handicap. the defensive line and the way that they rotate is going to be way, way, way too much for this Buccaneers offensive line to handle. And I think that's going to force Baker into some mistakes. Eagles ultimately get the win in the cover, and I think continue to march on. Maybe they end up winning ugly, but it's an Eagles. Eagles are pass here. Anyway, I break this down, and we'll be watching closely for signs that Jalen Hurts' shoulder is right. He's on record now that he's still dealing with some of the injury stuff that was bugging him at the end of last season, and I think that to a degree can be attributed to the play we've seen from him so far this season.
Yeah, this will be a good test for the Bucs, who coming off games against the Bears, who I think have proven themselves out to be the worst team in football, and then a Vikings defense, which is looking like a bottom 5 unit as well. I will say the one thing, and you touched on it, the fact that Avonte Maddox is done and out long term, and Bradbury's been banged up. He's coming back. Secondary is a little bit of a question mark. They've got a guy right now replacing Maddox called Mario Goodrich, not to be confused with Nigel Godrich, Radiohead producer and part of the band Ultra Ista, a very underrated electronic band about 10 years ago. The fact that he is in the slot defending Chris Godwin isn't ideal. No. I don't think that means the Bucs are going to win the game or anything, but Godwin's his receiving yards prop is 52.5, which seems a little bit low, particularly if you do like the Eagles to win and you think that it's going to be a game script where Mayfield has to throw. I think if nothing else, these past 2 weeks, Mayfield has shown that, with these weapons, he will be able to put up stats, even if it is in the second half of a game that they are losing. So I think that Godwin will go over 52.5. That would be my bet in that game. Let's quickly touch on Rams-Bengals. Bengals -1.5. Again, as we're recording, we don't know what the status of Joe Burrow is. Do you have a best guess as to whether he will play? And how would you play this game as a result?
No, I was not actively engaged in the info channels this last week, Jay. I don't know. I don't know what the good. I don't have the goods. I didn't ask. I didn't follow up. I just have been completely out of this market. I would like to see him get the night off, because I would like to see him get a couple weeks to get right. I think the Bengals can afford to use this time to get him right. Because the performances we've seen so far, week 1 was just an abomination, and then week 2, I think people are a little bit missing some of the issues he had with his mechanics in that game, and I hated seeing him, just really struggling physically at the end of that game, with some of the limping he was doing. So, very concerned about his long-term health for the rest of the season if he doesn't get a concerted amount of time to get right, and so I hope they do the right thing.
Yeah, I have no information as to whether he is going to play either. I mean, the fact that the line is moving towards the Rams suggests that perhaps someone thinks that he's not going to play. If I, based on just all of the info swirling around, if I was to make a best guess, I would guess that he does actually play. But again, I don't really know anything there, and the market would seem to be against that. The one bet that I would have on this game, your man Puka Nacua is set at 64.5 receiving yards. I don't like taking back-to-back overs on marquee names, and Puka Nacua is a marquee name.
Oh yeah,
but I think this guy is just impossible to price in the market. But 64.5 is not a big enough adjustment, and the fact that he is. Look, when we talk about these prop markets, they're basically these fantasy markets, and there's so much info that goes into fantasy, and so many people whose job it is to rank wide receivers, and Puka Nacua is a top 10 wide receiver this week in fantasy. He's ahead of guys like Chris Olave, and his receiving yards probably 64.5. He's had 35 targets the first 2 weeks, and Cooper Kupp isn't back yet. He's had 25 receptions. He's basically been the third best wide receiver in football after Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. And as someone who spent an entire year cheering against Cooper Kupp in 2021 from accumulating yards, cheering my Jonathan Taylor Offensive Player of the Year ticket. There is just something about McVay's offense where he gets guys in motion, the way that he attacks zone. It's just very difficult to be like, this guy doesn't get the ball today. Like, that's just not, it's just not really how it works. There was the Rams, they played 21 games in 2021, and no one could shut down Cooper Kupp. No one could even come close to it. And Puka Nacua is not as good as Cooper Kupp, but he's being used in similar ways. And the way they're moving him around the formation, I don't think it's as simple as shut that guy down. And also, even if they did that, apparently Tutu Atwell's like a top 30 receiver in the NFL right now. So, and Stafford is playing at an insane level. So I think that Nacua will go over that. Also, with someone like that who is so high variance and so unknown, he's like the quintessential guy to bet alternates for as well. He's like 8-1 to get 125 plus receiving yards. Again, he's had 35 targets the first 2 weeks. If ever there was a guy to bet the tails on, it's Puka Nacua. So I would be all over his overs. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, Stafford is healthy right now, by all accounts. He's being well protected, and the rest takes care of itself. So the Rams are going to have some decent offense in this game because I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to muster enough of a pass rush. I don't think they're going to be able to, to take away scheme stuff defensively. As much as I love Lou Anarumo, he's working with a half cocked deck this year. So I think the kind of isolating the Rams offensive side of this and taking some of the uncertainty away from what will happen on the other side of the ball is wise. And I also can see that some of the market move might not be info based on a Burrow. It might be people are going to need to see him play a quality football game for 4 quarters before they believe he's capable of going score for score with Stafford at full health, well protected, with Puka. So I think it may be just a little bit of no, this is the right side the way these guys are playing right now. So I like it.
Yep. And I think there's still some latency with adjusting to the fact that Matthew Stafford is really good again, just because that offense was so grim last year and everyone knows that Cooper Kupp is out. And people still don't really believe in Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, maybe justifiably, but Stafford himself is back to the guy who won the Super Bowl 18 months ago or so. And is, when he's healthy and at this level, he's like a top 8, top 9 quarterback in the league. Like, he's that good. And he's been playing like it so far.
I would actually listen to an argument of somebody saying he's healthier than when he won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, potentially. He was dealing with some stuff that year. And also that year, he just couldn't stop throwing interceptions. And they were winning some regular season games in spite of him. And yeah, even though he had, turnovers against the Rams, he looks so agile right now. And he looks healthy and he's throwing the ball incredibly well. Okay, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Please rate and subscribe if you're listening to us as a podcast. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows at Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.